Welcome back to another Frame Voyager video. A few weeks ago, I did this stupid Fiverr video where I paid people from $5 to $100 to color grade my videos or color correct or whatever you'd like to say. And just because it's not my favorite thing to do in video production, so I was like, let's see if there's someone out there that could do a better job than I could do at it, that I just pass it off to. And the results for sure were not anything close to what it would be considered good color correction or good color grading. It felt like people, even at the $100 mark, just threw like LUTs and stuff on it. So in the comment section and in our Discord channel, I kind of had a little bit of revolt from my subscribers, and they said that they could do a better job than the people on Fiverr, and begged me to be able to do a video on this where they could color grade it and then do it. And then at the same time, they wanted me to color grade it and color grade my own version of it, and then have my friend Tim, who's a colorist, come on and grade it too, but not tell him because they wanted to see how bad I can do. So, love my subscribers. But I just want to welcome Tim, my friend that does color grading and color correction. God bless him. And welcome. This is going to be a fun video, Tim.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on. I mean, honestly, I am the exact opposite. I love color grading. It's so fun to me to see just what you can do with the image to bring emotion to it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people did with it.
So before we get looking into these shots, Tim, I just want to go over some of the different shots that are in this, because I tried to make this really challenging for people who are color grading or color correcting this, because it's between a Pocket 4K, a Pocket 6K Pro, and an Ursa Mini G2, all on different lenses. Some of them have like blackness filters on them. Some don't. Some are in Gen 5 color science. Others are in Gen 4 color science. Some are at sunset. Some are at night. Some are underwater. So honestly, this is not, I don't expect, everything to be perfect on this, because none of this was shot to be put together. But I was really just trying to put something out there to, really push the color correctionists and stuff. And then there's even one shot that's way overexposed that we did in Alaska, which I think Tim and I had discussed over when we were shooting it. I was trying to test something out, and he was telling me I was shooting too high, and I didn't think I was, but I was. So there's that. Which he said, what the scopes don't lie, right?
It's true. Scopes don't lie. I need a t-shirt that says that, or better yet, a tattoo.
All right. Yeah. So let's go ahead and look at that first video. You can tell, if you want to stop at any specific section and kind of look or comment, we can.
Yeah. I love this first shot there.
Yep. Second shot I like.
Yeah.
I think it's a little too much, but we'll go back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just going to watch it through, and then I'll make some notes.
Yep.
Yeah, this is looking good. This is looking nice. Yeah, so, the one thing about color grading is a lot of it's very subjective. So as I'm critiquing these and judging these, just know that there are certain things that certain rules that shouldn't be broken. And one of those rules is that, if we're trying to make these shots cohesive and act like they're in a movie, things like the black levels, those should be consistent. And I think overall throughout this video, they are. So that's one of the first things I'm looking for, is consistency throughout. And I think there's a lot of consistency. And honestly, the biggest thing that I'm not a big fan of with these shots is consistent throughout. So props to whoever put this one together for keeping it consistent. So I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me, honestly, is the highlights look a little green. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge fan of that. I feel like especially with that second shot there, the sunset is just an incredibly beautiful moment. And especially when you're color grading, there's a huge opportunity there to really bring out some really powerful colors.
Yep.
It's possible that this person was kind of going for a somewhat uncomfortable feel. And if that's the case, then I think that green works. But in general, I'm looking at that shot. I'm looking at the coffee campfire shot, and that shot at the California beach that I remember very clearly.
Yep. Because you were the one that filmed that shot, so.
I did film that shot. Just not really digging the greenish kind of vibes and those highlights. I will say one thing that I'm pretty impressed with is that highlight recovery in that shot of Adrian with the coffee at the tent. you know, that's definitely a shot that's been overexposed in the highlights.
Yep. Very.
But it a lot of that detail comes back really well. So I'm pretty impressed with that. Even things throughout, like the saturation is pretty consistent.
That's what I was gonna say. I think there was only one moment where it got a little interesting, and that was just with the one shot with me underwater, fully underwater at about the 10-minute mark or the 10-second mark. It's just, that's to me the only part where it got like really like saturated, where everything else felt very like kind of muted. I think that part, the water part, which is, I totally get it. It is incredibly hard to do this. These two water shots are in the same location, but this one is with the sun coming directly down into the water. So it's really bright, and it kind of like, the hues in the water are so hard to capture correctly. So I don't really blame them, but that would be the only thing I think consistency wise. Everything else was great consistency wise across the board, except for maybe a couple water shots, which is almost to be expected.
For sure. But I think too, I don't know if this is the vibe that this person was going for.
Yeah.
But once you do get underwater, there's kind of that magic too, being underwater.
Yeah.
So to me, that just brings out a little more emotion, a little more experience to it, a little more vibrance. I think that is the power of color grading, is that sometimes there are things that you can intentionally be somewhat inconsistent with to try and bring about a certain emotion. So, I mean, to your point, from a technical perspective, yeah, I mean, the saturation between these two clips, and even the exposure, you know, it's a little darker in that shot before it.
Yep. But I will say it very hard between these two, because you're starting at the beginning when you're starting at a very bright shot, then you go underwater, and then the next one's underwater, but it's like bright. So it's just like, there's a lot going on in the shots. So very difficult.
Yeah, I think the other note I'd make on this one that I'm pretty impressed with is the skin tones are really consistent. I mean, I prefer a little more saturation in my skin tones personally. But you know, we've got you, Adrian, Gabe in there, Ethan.
Yep.
You know, the skin tones are fairly consistent throughout. You know, if I'm going to nitpick, Ethan and Adrian are a little less saturated in particular, or yours there's a good bit more reds in there. And I know behind the scenes fact that one was with the black Pro mist filter. So maybe that plays into it. But
it was also at sunset, so yeah.
Yeah, overall, I'd give this one a pretty good grade.
What would you say out we're grading 0 to 10, so
overall on this grade, I think it's a solid 7. It's a really good job. I think there's a little more that could have been done to tighten it up and maybe even just push the boundaries creatively a little more. But overall, it's a really solid, clean grade.
Yeah, I give it a 7 too. That's about where I was with it. It's pretty good. I mean, honestly, like you're talking about the skin tones, and like you want to go back and look at some of the Fiverr videos we had. I'll put one side by side with the beginning shot of this and the one I paid for. It's night and day difference. Like they got skin tones all over the place, and that's because they all put LUTs on the videos. So, and that's just what happens when you just use LUTs.
Ooh, yeah. Hold my feedback for the end, but there's definitely some things we need to talk about.
Ooh, I like that last shot.
Yeah, I think so. First thing that jumps out to me, first thing, is the sharpness.
That's my first. Yeah. I think a lot of these guys did it in DaVinci Resolve, and I think maybe just the setting was just a little too much. Like I could see a little sharpness, but I know this shot in particular was with a Pro Mist filter, so maybe it just felt a little blurry. Also, it was at a T1 stop, so.
Yeah, there's a few in here. There's that one, even the next one. I mean, really, honestly, all of them, the second and third shots. Yep. You know, sharpness is one of those things that you have to be super, super fine-tuned with. And one of the things that I'll even do if you are in Resolve is that oftentimes I find that the things that I'm trying to sharpen, I'm not usually trying to sharpen my highlights. So I'll use a qualifier, a Luma qualifier, and I'll select the darkest parts on my image, and then I'll just barely sharpen those a little bit. Just side tip for you. So that's the first thing that jumps out. All of these feel a bit cold. You know, honestly, I think the sunset colors in this second shot here, I like better than the first one. Yeah. The first shot though, there's a lot of blue going on in there in your skin.
Yeah, and it's very like It almost looks like maybe they were trying to throw some like noise on it or some grain on it, and it's just like a little. It's just, to me, it's very odd seeing this. I think it's just the sharpness or the clarity or whatever. Maybe there's like some of that at it. It just looks so different than every other shot I've seen of this. So, I mean, yeah.
There's not really a whole lot of contrast going on. That again, the black levels are fairly consistent. I'll give them that.
Yep.
Fairly consistent throughout, but especially that shot above the water. Those black levels are super lifted. I'm not looking at my scopes, and scopes don't lie. Remember that. But overall, the whole grade does feel fairly consistent.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Which, I mean, it's not like, I think it's a good starting point. Like, I don't think it would take much to go back into it, like the nodes and everything, and try to like fix everything. Because it's not like so far gone that you have to like reset. But yeah, I agree. What would you give it as a grade?
I'd probably give this a 4, maybe a 5. I mean, again, one of the things that we're looking for is consistency, and it is really consistent throughout. It just the positives are really consistent throughout, and the negatives are really consistent throughout.
Yep.
So again, like you said, there's some stuff here that we can build off of.
Yep.
But there's definitely also a lot that I would go back and change.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 4 as well. And for those of you watching, the score on this is completely different than the Fiverr one where they were higher scores. Those were just awful. You guys, like, all of these are already way better than the Fiverr ones, even with the technical stuff we're talking about. But we want to give good feedback to you as well.
So there's some solid stuff here. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I can get down with this. And by the way, if this is the guy that I think it is, he's also an absolute delight in the Discord channel. So I will give him that. Yeah. So there's some really, the one thing that jumps out at me about this one is now we're getting into territory where we're starting to push the boundaries a little bit, and we're starting to get a little more, there's just a lot more intention in this grade. So definitely hats off to that. I will say that sunset shot kind of makes me think of like a stew. I don't know why. I think what it is, and I'm kidding about the stew again. I really love a lot of the things about this grade. That shot in particular jumps out to me in a not great way, just because now we've taken those reds and they look brown. So that's not something that you're really going to see in a sunset, is brown. And again, I'm not saying that all these shots have to be technically accurate to what the eye sees in real life. That's not what I'm saying. But I can't really think of a context in a film where I'd want to see like a brown sunset. And that's one thing that you have to be really intentional about with color grading, is that yes, we can tweak colors and we can make our reds look a little more magenta or a little more teal. But when we're completely changing colors, like if we make John's skin tones like orange, that's not really the way we want to go. So overall, just going through this shot by shot, the first shot, I like it. It's a little orangey on the skin tones, a little brownish, but
that's terrible.
Fairly and it's fairly consistent throughout. Where it really started to jump out to me like, hey, this is some solid stuff, is when we got to that third, I believe it's the third shot.
Above the water.
Yeah, above the water. We're getting some real nice contrast in there. I like where those black levels are sitting.
Yep.
The highlights are there, pretty nice. That water's a little dark underneath, a little darker than the next shot, but the color of that water there is pretty consistent. So props to him for that. Now, the shot that really jumped out to me is that campfire coffee scene, because that's when we're really starting to get some nice contrast into Adrian. And that's something that when you're shooting towards the sun, when something is backlit, can be really hard to get in an image. Props to him for really making Adrian the focus there, getting some real nice punch in there. Those highlights are overexposed like we talked about before, but
he managed to bring them back and make them look pleasing.
Smart. Yeah. Now, this shot of Ethan, I think has some really good contrast to it. I do think we're starting to get a little overexposed.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. This shot, it's because there's snow coming and it's still sun out, so the sun's hitting off and reflecting all of it. So you really gotta bring back that or do some highlight roll off or something to get rid of the that bright reflectiveness.
Yeah. And there's some things you can use with qualifiers too to help you with that. But this is much more in the direction that I would want to go as a colorist.
What would you say as far as grade for this one?
I'd give this probably a solid 9. You know, it's really close. Again, there's a few things I'd want to tweak, especially those sunset colors. But overall, I mean, this is something that I'd be close to comfortable to giving off to a client of mine. So pretty well done.
I would I would give it a 7. I like it. I think there's some things with it. So split the difference and say 8.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go 8 with it. Yeah, but again, I mean, if this is an 8,
yeah,
I might have to change what we've given so far.
Do you want to give him like a 6?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move it back down to a 6. Sorry, first guy.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Well.
Hard.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say this is probably the least consistent so far. Especially, and I know that this is a really tough shot to grade, but when we get to that shot of Ethan in the snow, those black levels are sitting very differently there.
Yeah.
Overall, very, very magenta with everything. You know, those sunset colors overall aren't bad, but it's very bright.
Well, everything's very purple, or like if you want to say magenta, but it's like it's bordering on purple.
Now I will say there's some nice stuff done here. You know, that fish popped out a little more to me than some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Exposure's not bad overall. But again, we get to that campfire. I don't know. It almost has like an HDR kind of look.
I was about to say that that this whole thing feels like it was remapped color wise to fit an HDR look. Really what it looks like.
I love that shot of Gabe. I like what was done there. Like that, if I were to go back to this person and have them recolor it, I would say, hey, you did some really solid stuff with this shot. Let's try and build more around that. Like the skin tones are much more natural. Ethan just kind of looks, you know, as you say, purple. Not digging that so much. The fireworks are nice, but again, it's magenta. So it's kind of similar to one of the earlier ones where, you know, the pros are pretty consistent throughout, and the cons are pretty consistent throughout. And then there's, you know, a few shots that aren't as consistent. You know, I think overall on this one, I'd probably give it a 3, honestly, just because there's not really a whole lot that I would keep. There's a lot that I would change. It's a good start. You know, whoever did this, you got some really good foundations there, especially in getting your exposure right. But there's definitely a lot that we would work through to get it even better.
Yeah, and I will preface this by saying I'd probably give it a 4. So I guess we'll say 3.5, split the difference. This is not just one of those you kind of like sit down and just like figure it out within like 10 minutes because it's very complex. Yeah, about that. But
I mean, honestly, even when I get hired to color grade stuff, I usually have changes from the director. You know, it's not like I give the first pass off and it's done. You know, they come back and they're like, hey, well, actually I was thinking this kind of feel. So that's the beauty of being a colorist, is there is usually that relationship there to where it's a push and a pull. There's feedback and you can kind of go back and forth with it. So all of this critique, it's not to say, hey, you can't color grade. It's just to say, hey, this is the process. You know, you're probably not going to get it right. on the first time. There's certain things that you want to try to get right every time, which is exposure, black levels, that kind of deal. But you know, anybody who's watching this, anybody who participated in this, don't be discouraged just because of what we're saying. You know, there's all of these so far have had some really good fundamentals that can be built off of for sure.
Yeah, and still far better than any Fiverr video. I mean, so.
For sure. You guys should be on Fiverr. There you go. Oh. Oh. Huh. Okay then. So there's some fun stuff down here that is not necessarily my preference.
Yep.
But it's fun. You know, I think they went a little heavy on the glow. I'm guessing that's what they were using there is the, you know, it's almost that in post pro mist filter look.
For which shot?
Everything. Really.
Everything.
I mean, you look at the first shot, you look at the second shot, not so much on the third. Yeah, especially those sunset shots. Everything just, it kind of looks like a watercolor painting, and that I don't know, you lose a lot of that sharpness. I'm not quite sure what they did. I'm guessing it was some sort of glow feature because I know Resolve has that. The colors are interesting throughout. Definitely not consistent.
No.
You're looking a bit orange there. That above water shot is very cold.
Yep.
You know, which it looks believable. You know, it looks like it could be on a cloudy day. And the water's pretty consistent between those two. It's a little brighter underneath. That shot of Adrian, you know, I know I talked about the earlier guy who brought out that contrast really well. But while he kind of did a similar thing here, his skin tones are looking a bit muddy.
Bit muddy.
Yeah, there's just a lot of like brown, especially when you pause it just after that flare goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the shadows on his face. You know, it kind of looks like he's got a 5 o'clock shadow or something going on. Well, it's also an exposure thing. You know, all the shadows in that shot are pretty low. Not the black levels, but just those shadows are really muddied up.
Would you think that you could be able to see his face in this kind of shot typically? Because it is that sunset shot and there's no like direct light coming from behind him, or
I would color this to see his face, yeah. And I mean, I shot it to see his face. You know, I shot the shot, and that's something that I would communicate with my colorist and say, hey, you know, I shot it so you can see his face. And there have been people so far that have done that really well, that have exposed his face really well, and also kept that sun in balance.
I will say, out of all of these shots, I do like that second shot the most, I think. To me, it almost feels like a oh gosh, why am I not remembering this? Like the Justice League, the one that was redone, like kind of that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay.
More like it's more artsy, more like exaggerated colors with a lot of like blurriness and stuff.
You know, there's some good foundational stuff here. You know, so far we haven't had anything like crazy crushed black levels or anything like that, which is good. But yeah, I'm just personally not a big fan of this grade. So I'd probably give it a 2, maybe.
A 2? Okay. I would probably give it a 4. So you want to say like a 3?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, okay.
So it feels very desaturated. Well, it's flat. Flat's a better word for what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Very, very flat.
A lot of
Well, but then that shot of Ethan isn't though.
It's
so
not.
That's
okay, that shot of Ethan though is weird. I mean, I'll admit, some of these shots are very strange.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing though. As a colorist, like I've had jobs where people give me different camera systems, different exposures for different Like I literally just worked on a short film where they shot part of one scene at nighttime with natural light. The next part of the scene was shot at daytime. So the white balances and the exposure were totally different, and it's my job as a colorist to match those. So, you know, I get these shots are tough, but at the same time, like the expectation should be to get them consistent. So that's what actually surprises me with this one, is that most people with this shot of Ethan so far have had their exposure or their shadows and their black levels lifted. That shot of all of them has been flat for most people, but everything else in this one except for that shot is flat.
Yep. Which is funny. It's just
I could see that shot. I could actually see that shot of Gabe, depending on what you're going for. I could see that shot working really well in a very like pink pastel flat kind of video. You know, if you put up like a fun adventurous piece,
it almost
up on
looks like you
Vimeo.
took almost all the highlights out of it, or brought the ISO levels down to like 100 and then reboosted everything.
Oh yeah, like brought the ISO levels down to 100 and then reboosted them to 1,000.
Yeah.
Inside jokes.
Like you kind of get that like flat, dull look when you start bringing down the highlights too much in your footage.
Overall, again, just very flat. And, you know, in my mind, you're taking raw footage or log footage, and, you know, you should be punching some contrast in there. I'm not saying everything has to look like a movie, but it kind of should in a way, you know, unless it's a very intentional style choice for a personal piece. But then if that's the case, that should match throughout all the shots, which it doesn't here.
That would make sense.
Again, some really good foundational things. I'd probably give this one a 4.
I would give it 3.
Yeah.
So you say 3.5? Yeah.
Go. It's playing. Oh my. Wow. Okay. Ooh, murky. Oh wait, they used a different part of the clip.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of people that put the project back together, because I gave them a Premiere file for this, and they put it together with a DaVinci file. And I think there's a couple people that converted it, and then it ended up just they didn't get the clips spot on. So,
well, I'm gonna call this guy Fire and Ice because it's one or the other with this grade. Man, so John, you kind of look like a Cheeto.
at the beginning.
At the beginning, and then I think your face just burst into the sky and created Cheeto dust. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. I really hope that I don't come across as harsh. I joke around all the time.
I will say I don't mind the sunset shot. The only problem is like every other shot needs to be very similar to it, or else it's just like it's very shocking to like get on that.
I do mind the sunset shot because I feel like it's very forced with the orange, and the problem I have with it is that it very much takes away the attention from you in the shot. And you should, again, that's the thing about these sunset shots. It's a little tricky when you're thinking about color grading them, is you want to make the sunset the star, but you actually don't. Like the person in the shot should be the hero of the shot. So you want to bring in that color, but you want to make sure that it's not distracting away from the intention of the shot. There's some good stuff going on in that above water shot, although it seems like muddy, very muddy. There's not hardly any detail that we can see.
Yeah, I would say the black level is so dark.
Well, but here's the thing though. There's something I really like about the shot here, which is that I kind of like that we can only see the highlights. Yeah. You know, like I'm really drawn to your hand on the gauge
GoPro?
Or whatever that is there on the GoPro. Yeah. I'm really drawn to that. So if that's the intention there, I think that's cool. I think we do need to pull up, because that's such a small part of the frame, like they can't really be the hero of the shot. So we do need a little more exposure on John there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the stylistic approach to it, because you could see this in like a movie thing, you know, like in a movie, because a lot of times movies do grade things incredibly dark. Like I think like that new movie that came out that I went and watched, was it The Green Knight or... Yeah, like that. That's one thing people complain about the most about it is how dark it was graded, and I actually liked it. I kind of like the moody looks to it, but yeah.
So, but the skin tones are really, really great on that shot at the table. I love those skin tones there. Oh, yeah. Now they do get a little murky and muddy with Gabe.
Really? See, I loved the Gabe shot. That was my favorite shot of this. Yeah. What
It's
don't you like about
very
it? The muddiness?
just muddy. Yeah, I mean, it's very stylized. Like, it matches the rest of that. Like, it feels right with the
Yep.
grade of that shot. But yeah, it's just very, very muddy. Now, this is where the ice part of your name, Fire and Ice now. It's very blue and very purple. So if you want to go this direction with this shot of Ethan, I would really take those magentas in his face and cool him off, like make him very blue. I don't mind a blue grade. I actually think, like, if you did that here, I'd love this shot. But that purple really jumps out to me and isn't pleasing. Well, and one tip for you too, that sometimes helps with getting a consistent grade, is that Resolve has a color palette generator feature that you can add onto your nodes. So you can see what kind of colors you're dealing with, and try and get those consistent. So overall with this grade, there's some stuff I really like and there's some stuff I really, really don't. I'd probably give it, especially where we're grading on consistency, I don't think I could give it more than a 4.
I'd be about a 4 too. So,
if I had that shot of Adrian, that shot of Gabe, I'd probably give it closer to a 7 if it was just those 2 shots. Oh, that's strange.
what?
We'll go back to it, but that first shot, there's some funky stuff going on. Okay, there's that pastel kind of looking at.
Ooh, that's blue.
Yeah. Okay, so from the top, I feel like, so watch that first clip slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think they did, and I could be wrong, but I'm guessing that they used qualifiers for their, like, Luma qualifiers to affect your skin tones.
Yep.
But the problem is that your skin tones, their luminance value changes in that shot. So if you watch slowly,
Because they
your
faded
cheek
it, and
goes
then it
from
changes
very
this-
red
It changes with
and
the
then
fade.
almost goes blue
Yeah.
in certain spots. But there's pockets of color. So that's one thing you have to be really careful with when you're using qualifiers. Again, I don't know. Maybe they used hue versus hue, or hue versus luminance or something. Or it wouldn't have been that, but hue versus hue. And they had a very fine selection there, like a very small selection. Is that when you get very fine-tuned with individual color areas, it doesn't always stay consistent throughout the shot. And that's something that we're seeing here, especially in that cheek there. That color is shifting, and now we've got pockets where, like, this part of his cheek is bright and less saturated. This part is really saturated. This part is a lot less. So that's something to be careful of. These black levels on the sunset shot do look crushed to me.
Yeah.
I like the color. That next shot's pretty cold, although that water is really consistent shot to shot. That's nicely done.
Yeah, I would say, like, out of all of them, it's probably one of the best consistency wise.
We're getting into muddy skin tones there with Adrian. And then that shot of Gabe, I think, probably has the most contrast on it so far.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't normally have a huge issue with, except that it looks like we're losing detail in the sun. And it also looks like his face is too dark.
Yeah.
So you stretch that really far now, to where we're getting close to losing detail on both ends.
Yeah. Anyways, what'd you
Yeah,
give
it
this?
just has a kind of green screen look to it.
Yeah.
The fireworks shot is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd give this. The exposure is not very consistent. The colors are not very consistent. I might, again, some good foundational stuff, but I might give it a 2.
Okay. I'd probably give it a 3, so 2.5.
Yeah. Oh. We're kind of back to that purple sunset again.
Water's pretty consistent.
Interesting bubbles.
Yep.
Not bad.
Oh, okay.
Ooh. Nice. Okay. Overall, second half of this video, much better than the first one. Yeah. Much better. Your skin tones are kind of a bit red there. It's a bit aggressive in the red, but I like what we're doing with the trees there. That's nice. Again, personal preference, not a huge fan of the purple in the sunset.
Same. I don't really like purple in this shot.
Yeah. Now that third shot, yeah. Again, it's kind of similar to one of the guys we had earlier where those shadows are sitting pretty high.
Yep.
I darken those up a bit. Water's fairly consistent, but I don't know why we have orange in the bubbles unless maybe
There's
John's
orange in
swimming
the
away
bubbles?
from the exploding Titanic, which could
There
be.
is orange in the bubble. How did he get orange in the bubbles? That's interesting.
Yeah, that's probably a luminance thing.
I was gonna, yeah, because even like around my hands, you can see that like orange.
He probably took those brighter values and those highlights. Shots of Adrian aren't bad. You know, they're fine. Now, that shot of Gabe, there's a lot here that I like. I think there's some really good colors in that flare and the sunset. Although his face is darker, it's still like it's not muddy. Like even the exposure isn't muddy. Like I can see the emotion on his face very clearly. And especially when that red flare hits, that's a really, really nice look. I like that a lot. That shot of Ethan is really solid. The exposure on that is really solid.
Yeah, it's probably the best Ethan shot, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I personally would maybe like make it a little bit darker, but that's also, I like things darker and moodier, but like the consistency across it, it looks really good. Like his face, probably the best colored out of everything.
Yes. Yeah, overall, it's not very consistent. Black levels and exposures kind of all over the place. White balance is all over the place. Even on that sunset shot of Gabe that I love, I might make that a little more magenta. Looks a little greenish early on. Overall, is again some really solid stuff. You know, I think your subscribers have a decent knowledge of color grading and been impressed. And even though I found those bubbles being orange kind of odd, that's kind of cool. So I probably got to go like a 5.
Yeah, I was going to go for 5 too. Love the second half. The first half, ugh. I really think though the first half is where the hardest footage is to deal with, but that's also my opinion. Out of all of them, because I know you guys wanted to see what Tim thought of my color grade and how much on top, you know, how much better than me you guys are. So Tim, which one do you think was mine?
All right, so I am reviewing. I have a guess.
Okay.
There's some stuff that I know to be true about John's color grading. There's some stuff that I just know to be true. So I think John's trying to throw me off the scent a little bit. I do. But there's still some Johnisms in this one that I think it might be John. My guess is that John graded number 5.
Yep, that was mine.
Knew it. There's just, and that's the fun thing about colorists, honestly. Like, and if you look at colorists on Instagram and stuff, like you'll just kind of see just some characteristics about them sometimes that you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of their look.
Tim doesn't really like my look, so.
No, what did I give this one?
You gave it a 2.
Oh.
Oh yeah, so out of the nine, now we finally came to the end. We said, which one did we say was the best one? Was it that second one? No, it was Tommy. It was Tom Verden's.
Yeah, Tommy. Nice job, dude.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun. I mean, again, you know, there's things that we talked about. All of these, there's some really good foundational stuff. Most of you guys had better foundations than John. No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, again, all of them had really good foundations. You know, it's really the basics that you should be really looking for is consistency in exposure and contrast, and consistency in color across the board. And for the most part, they were really solid. There's some people that got a little more adventurous, and props to them for that. But you know, again, keep working at it, keep messing around, have fun, experiment. That's the beauty of color grading. There's a million different ways you can do it.
And give yourself a good pat on the back for none of you being worse than any of the Fiverr people we did in the last video. So
it's true.
Great job. I'm glad to do this. We'll probably do some more of these videos in the future because I love doing community posts like this and having you guys like come out in here and even get some feedback from someone who's a better colorist than I am, actually is a colorist. I'd never really want to fully review your guys' stuff because I have preferences, what I like to see, and I know what it needs to look like, but Tim can actually tell you how to get there. So, but yeah, thanks Tim for joining on this video. Yeah, you want to plug your channel at all?
Yeah, if you guys want to find me, my YouTube channel is Fly with Tim, dedicated to drones, and going to be having some fun with that channel there soon. We did just move, so I slowed down for a bit there. But man, it's just fun to be part of this Frame Voyager community. People that I know in person, people that I've come to know just through the comment section or the Discord channel. So highly encourage you guys, if you're not already a part of it, be a part of it, because just a fun community for filmmakers.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Tim's also the one that did some training for color correction, color grading in our Pocket 4K masterclass, and we'll be doing some in our future masterclasses as well. So you'll see Tim around. He's been on the channel pretty much since the beginning with us. So
it's the mustache. That's why he keeps me around.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, obviously, to stay up to date with all of our content. Join the Discord channel if you happen to be part of that community. We've linked it below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for joining.